Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever felt invisible because you could not speak the language well? Imagine being a genius in your home country, a top student, a respected professional, someone with big dreams. But in a new country, none of that seems to matter. Your diplomas stay in a folder, your experience is ignored, and the only job you can find is washing dishes in a busy restaurant kitchen. This is the story of someone who once solved complex problems and led important projects, but now spends long hours standing in front of a sink full of dirty plates. Not because they lack intelligence, talent, or ambition, but because of one powerful barrier: language. Every day, they listen carefully to conversations they barely understand. Every night, they study English, hoping that one day they will pass the certification exam that could finally open the door to the life they deserve. But the journey is not easy. There will be embarrassing mistakes, difficult moments, and times when giving up feels easier than continuing. Will persistence and hard work be enough to overcome the language barrier? Or will their talent remain hidden behind a sink full of dishes? Let's begin today's real-life inspired story and practice English together. Listen carefully, learn new vocabulary, and see how determination can change a life. The restaurant kitchen was loud and busy. Plates were clattering, cooks were shouting orders, and waiters rushed in and out with trays of food. In the corner, near a large metal sink, Adrian stood quietly washing dishes, plate after plate, glass after glass. Most people in the restaurant only knew him as the dishwasher. He worked hard, spoke very little, and always finished his tasks quickly. But Adrian was not always a dishwasher. In his home country, he was known as a brilliant engineer. He graduated at the top of his university and worked on complex projects that improved transportation in large cities. People respected his ideas. But when Adrian moved to a new country for better opportunities, everything changed. During interviews, he struggled to explain his knowledge in English. The interviewers spoke quickly, and Adrian could not find the right words. One by one, the rejection emails arrived. Finally, he accepted the only job he could find quickly: washing dishes in a busy restaurant. As Adrian cleaned another stack of plates, a waiter dropped a new pile beside him. "Busy night," the waiter said quickly. Adrian nodded and smiled. But inside, he thought about something else. One day, when his English improved and he passed the certification exam, people would finally see who he really was. For now, he kept washing dishes and quietly preparing for a better future.
Adrian's shift usually ended late at night. By the time he left the restaurant, the streets were quiet. The lights from the shops were already off, and the cold air felt refreshing after the hot kitchen. Most of his co-workers went home to rest. But Adrian had another routine. Instead of sleeping immediately, he sat at a small table in his apartment with a notebook, a dictionary, and his phone. For Adrian, the night was study time. English words covered the pages of his notebook. New vocabulary, grammar rules, difficult pronunciation. He listened to English videos again and again, repeating sentences quietly. Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. Sometimes he said the same word 10 times until it sounded right. Learning English felt strange to him. Back home, he used to solve complex engineering problems with numbers and formulas. Those problems made sense immediately, but English was different. Sometimes the spelling didn't match the sound. Sometimes one word had many meanings, and sometimes native speakers talked so fast that everything sounded like one long word. Still, Adrian refused to quit. One evening at work, while washing dishes, he listened carefully to the cooks talking. "Table 7 needs 2 burgers. Where is the garlic sauce? Move, move, we're late." Adrian quietly repeated the phrases in his mind. Table 7, garlic sauce, we're late. The restaurant kitchen slowly became his real-life classroom. He learned words from menus. He learned expressions from coworkers. He learned pronunciation from listening carefully every day. Sometimes his coworkers noticed. One night, a line cook named Mateo smiled at him and said, "Adrian, you study English a lot, right?" Adrian nodded. "Yes, every day." Mateo laughed kindly. "Good. Soon you speak better than all of us." Adrian smiled, but he knew something important. Improving English was not just about daily conversations. To work as an engineer again, he needed to pass an official English certification exam, and that exam was not easy. But every night, with his notebook open and tired eyes, Adrian continued studying, because each new word brought him one step closer to the life he lost. After several months of studying, Adrian finally felt ready. Not completely confident, but ready enough to try. The English certification exam was the key to many professional jobs. Without it, most companies would not even consider his application. So one morning, Adrian woke up early, put on his best shirt, and traveled across the city to the testing center. The building was quiet and serious. Many people were sitting in the waiting room, reviewing notes or looking nervously at their phones. Adrian sat down and took a deep breath. "This is important," he told himself. When the exam began, the first part was reading. Adrian focused carefully and answered the questions one by one. It was not easy, but he felt okay. Then came the listening section. A voice played through the speakers, speaking quickly in English. Adrian tried to follow the conversation, but some words passed too fast. He understood part of it, but not everything. Next came the speaking section. This was the part Adrian feared the most. A teacher sat across from him and asked questions. "Tell me about your professional experience." Adrian knew exactly what he wanted to say. His mind was full of ideas about his engineering work and the projects he had completed. But when he started speaking, the sentences came out slowly. He searched for the right words. Sometimes he paused too long. Sometimes his grammar was wrong. The teacher listened politely and wrote notes. After the exam ended, Adrian walked outside into the bright afternoon sun. He already felt the answer in his heart. A week later, the results arrived. Adrian opened the email slowly. He did not pass. For a few minutes, he sat quietly in his small apartment, staring at the screen. All those late nights studying, and it still wasn't enough. The next evening at the restaurant, Adrian returned to his place beside the sink. Plates piled up quickly as the dinner rush began. For a moment he felt discouraged, but then he remembered something important. This was only his first attempt, and Adrian had never been someone who gave up easily. A few days after the exam results, Adrian returned to his normal routine at the restaurant. The kitchen was busy as usual. Orders came quickly, and the cooks worked fast. Adrian stood at the sink, washing plates and trying to stay focused. But inside, he still felt disappointed about the exam. During a short break, one of the waiters approached him. "Hey, Adrian," the waiter said, "can you bring those clean plates to the front?" Adrian heard the request, but he misunderstood one word.
He thought the waiter said forks, not plates. So Adrian quickly grabbed a large container full of forks and carried it to the front of the restaurant. The waiter looked confused. "No, no," he said, pointing toward the kitchen. "Plates. I asked for plates." Adrian froze for a moment. "Oh, sorry," he said quietly. Some of the other workers laughed a little, not in a mean way, but the moment still felt embarrassing. Adrian returned to the kitchen and brought the correct plates. As he walked back to the sink, he felt frustrated with himself. Such a small mistake, but it reminded him again how difficult English still was for him. Later that night, the line cook, Matteo, came over. "Don't worry about earlier," Matteo said with a friendly smile. "English is crazy sometimes. Even we make mistakes." Adrian smiled slightly. "Thank you," he replied. That night, when Adrian returned home, he opened his notebook again. Instead of feeling discouraged, he wrote something at the top of the page. Mistakes are part of learning. Then he continued studying, because every mistake meant one more step toward improvement.
One evening, the restaurant was extremely busy. Orders came faster than usual, and the kitchen felt more chaotic than ever. Cooks shouted instructions, waiters rushed back and forth, and dirty dishes quickly piled up beside Adrian's sink. Adrian worked as fast as he could. Suddenly, a loud voice came from the center of the kitchen. "The dishwasher is broken!" one of the cooks shouted. Everyone stopped for a moment. The large machine Adrian used to clean the dishes had suddenly stopped working. Water leaked onto the floor, and the screen showed an error message. The chef looked frustrated. "We can't stop the kitchen now," he said. "We need this machine." Adrian looked at the dishwasher carefully. He noticed the blinking lights and listened to the strange sound coming from inside the machine. Back in his home country, Adrian had spent years solving technical problems. Machines, systems, and complex designs were familiar to him. Slowly, he stepped closer. "Chef, maybe I check?" Adrian said carefully. The chef looked surprised. "You know machines?" Adrian nodded. The chef shrugged. "All right, take a look, but we need it fast." Adrian knelt beside the dishwasher and opened a small panel. He studied the wires and the water pipe for a moment. After a minute, he noticed the problem. A small valve was blocked, stopping the water from flowing correctly. Adrian cleaned it quickly and closed the panel again. Then he pressed the start button. For a second, nothing happened. Then the machine started again with a loud humming sound. Water rushed inside, and the dishwasher began working normally. The chef's eyes widened. "Well, I didn't expect that," he said with a smile. Matteo laughed. "See, Adrian is not just a dishwasher." Adrian smiled quietly and returned to his work. For the first time since he started the job, some of his co-workers looked at him differently. Maybe they were beginning to realize something. The quiet dishwasher might be much more than they thought.
After Adrian fixed the dishwasher, something in the kitchen slowly changed. The work was still the same. Adrian still stood at the sink, washing plates and stacking glasses. But his co-workers looked at him differently now. The chef sometimes asked him small questions about machines in the kitchen. "Adrian, does this sound normal to you?" the chef asked one evening while pointing at a noisy refrigerator. Adrian listened for a moment and then replied slowly, "Maybe, the fan inside." The chef nodded thoughtfully. Even Matteo started introducing Adrian differently. "This is Adrian," Matteo told a new worker one night. "He's the smartest dishwasher you'll ever meet." Everyone laughed, but Adrian felt a small sense of pride.
For the first time since arriving in the country, people were starting to see a little of his real abilities. Still, Adrian knew something important. Fixing a machine in the kitchen was nice, but it would not change his future completely. Without passing the English certification exam, professional companies would still say no. So every night, Adrian continued his routine. Work, go home, study English. But now something inside him felt stronger. The failure from his first exam no longer felt like the end of the story. Instead, it felt like the beginning of his second attempt.
Months passed and Adrian's English slowly improved. He understood more conversations in the kitchen. Sometimes he even joined short discussions with his coworkers. His sentences were still simple, but they were clearer now. Every night he continued studying, reading articles, listening to English podcasts, practicing speaking in front of a mirror. Finally, Adrian made an important decision. It was time to try the English certification exam again. This time, he felt calmer. On the morning of the test, Adrian arrived at the testing center with the same nervous feeling, but also more confidence. When the reading section began, he noticed something different. The sentences felt easier to understand. Then came the listening section. The voices were still fast, but Adrian could catch more words than before. He felt hopeful. Finally, the speaking section started. The teacher asked him a question. "Tell me about a challenge you faced in your life." Adrian took a deep breath. This time, he didn't rush. He spoke slowly and carefully. He talked about moving to a new country. He talked about working in a restaurant kitchen. And he talked about studying English every night after work. His grammar was not perfect, but his message was clear. When the exam ended, Adrian walked outside again, just like the first time, but this time he felt something different. Not fear, hope. A week later, the exam results arrived. Adrian opened the email slowly, holding his breath. And then, a smile appeared on his face. He passed! For the first time in months, all his hard work, late nights, and struggles felt real. The language barrier that had kept him from his profession was finally starting to disappear. The next day at the restaurant, Adrian carried the clean dishes to the front and couldn't stop thinking about the news. Matteo noticed his unusual smile. "Adrian, you look different today. What's up?" he asked. Adrian paused. I passed my English exam," he said slowly. Matteo's eyes widened. "Really? That's amazing!" The chef, overhearing, nodded with respect. "Good work, Adrian. I always knew you were smart." For Adrian, the barrier was not just about language anymore. It was about opportunity. He knew that soon he could leave the kitchen behind and return to the work he truly loved. But he also realized something important. Every struggle in the dishwasher sink, every mistake, every long night of studying, it all prepared him for this moment. For the first time, Adrian felt a mix of pride and relief. He was still in the kitchen, still washing dishes, but now the future looked much brighter. He washed one more plate, smiled quietly to himself, and whispered, "Almost there."
With the English certification in hand, Adrian finally felt the doors beginning to open. He updated his resume and started sending applications to engineering companies again. This time, he knew he could communicate clearly and confidently. But the process was different from before. Every interview still made his heart race.
Questions about past projects, technical challenges, and team experiences came quickly, but now Adrian could explain his ideas clearly. Some interviews went well, some did not, but each one felt like practice, building his confidence. At the restaurant, his coworkers noticed a change in him too. He was still the quiet dishwasher, but there was a new light in his eyes. He sometimes shared small English phrases he learned with Matteo or helped new coworkers understand the kitchen rules. Adrian also realized he had grown in ways he hadn't expected. Working in the kitchen, standing in front of the sink day after day, had taught him patience, humility, and the value of persistence. One evening, as he scrubbed a tray of greasy pans, he looked around the busy kitchen. For years he had worried that people would only see a dishwasher. Now he knew they saw something more, someone who never gave up. Adrian smiled quietly to himself. "Soon," he whispered, "soon I'll be back where I belong." And with that hope, he continued washing the dishes, each one a small step toward his new beginning. A few weeks later, Adrian received an email that made his heart race. It was from a respected engineering firm he had applied to. They wanted to offer him a position. He read the email again and again, hardly believing it. All those nights studying English, all the long hours washing dishes, all the struggles, it had finally paid off. The next day, Adrian went to the restaurant for his final shift. His coworkers were curious. Matteo raised an eyebrow. "You look happy today. Something good?" Adrian smiled. "I got the job." The chef clapped him on the shoulder. "Congratulations, Adrian. You earned it." For the first time in months, Adrian left the kitchen knowing he wouldn't be coming back as a dishwasher. He walked outside, breathing in the fresh air, feeling the excitement of a new beginning. Adrian remembered his journey, the embarrassment of small mistakes, the fear of failing the exam, the nights of studying after exhausting work. Every moment had led him here. He realized something important. Intelligence alone was not enough. Patience, persistence, and courage to face failure were just as powerful. As he looked forward to his new life, Adrian smiled quietly. The genius who once felt invisible was finally seen, not just for his degrees, but for his determination, his resilience, and his heart. And that was worth more than any certificate. The end, but the beginning of a new chapter in life.
Thank you for listening to Adrian's story, The Language Barrier. It shows us that even the most talented people can face challenges when they move to a new country or struggle with a language. But with patience, persistence, and hard work, it is possible to overcome obstacles and achieve your dreams. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next real-life English learning stories. You can practice your English by repeating the sentences, learning the new vocabulary, and trying to summarize the story in your own words. Remember, every small step counts, and every mistake is just a part of learning. Now it's your turn. Try the quiz after listening and see how much you remember from Adrian's journey. Stay motivated, keep learning, and see you in the next story.